All right, folks, welcome back into another edition of Buffalo Game Day Recap, breaking down the Bills' victory over the Cleveland Browns, 31-23 in Detroit, thanks to, of course, all that snow that made its way to Orchard Park in the South Towns. I'm AJ Feldman. He's Thad Brown from Ford Field. First off, congratulations on making it to Detroit. Everybody got there, and we got a football game, and the Bills won.
Yeah, once everyone got out of Buffalo, everyone being the Bills and their staff, this was probably a pretty good typical game for what I think you would expect for the Bills and Browns. And I think it did benefit Buffalo a little bit having this game indoors instead of outside. If Cleveland gets out to that opening touchdown and that early lead, where it was 10-3, and the game's in the snow, it might have been a lot more difficult for the Bills to come back. But having it here in the Dome, eventually the Bills got going. End of the first half drive was big. And really, it kind of felt like the Bills in the first half looked like a team that had been distracted all week or had been dealing with distractions all week. Remember, it wasn't just the snow. Everybody was sick earlier in the week. They had to have a practice on Wednesday that wasn't full team drills. Then Thursday happens where the game gets moved. Friday's no practice. So, it's been a whirlwind of stuff that's happened with this team all week long. And for them to come out looking kind of not into the game, I think that was appropriate. Now, I got to say, I talked to Sal Capaccio on the sideline about this, and he made a really good point. He's like, look, if they played bad, we would say that, well, they were distracted and, weren't focused. If they played good, then the narrative would be, oh, look, everybody got fired up and it brought the team together, all the different stuff they had to do. And we probably got a little bit of both today with that. Regardless, end of the day, once the two teams got here, we saw that the Bills were better, and although the Browns had opportunities early, I think they came out with a very smart game plan. Obviously went right down the field, scored a touchdown. We're in control of this game for 20, 25 minutes. But then the Browns started doing, Browns things. You had the fumbled snap when the Browns were driving. The Bills with a heck of a defensive stand in the third quarter, stopping back-to-back quarterback sneaks. We'll get into that a little later on. So when the Bills needed to make big plays, they did. When the Browns needed to make big mistakes, they did that too. And at the end of the day, the Bills were the better team. They proved they were the better team. Although it was an 8-point win, it'll be officially a 1-score win. Yay! It really wasn't that. This was a game where the Bills were by far the better team. And, it felt that way even, when that onside kick at the end started bouncing around. So a crazy week. Monday through Saturday was tough. But once we got to Sunday, this was what we expected from the Bills.
No, I mean, if you were to look up in the dictionary, the classic, I can't believe the Bills are up at halftime after playing like this. This was that game. Somehow, some way, the Browns had their chances in the first half. They couldn't convert. There was that key drive in the red zone where the Browns had two big drops. One of them would have been for a touchdown. The other one would have been for a first down, maybe even a touchdown itself. They had to settle for a field goal there. That was big. And the Browns just let the Bills stick around enough for their offense, and specifically Josh Allen, to just kind of figure itself out. Allen looked terrible early on. I mean, but the last couple weeks it was poor decisions and throwing it to defenders, things like that. This was just, blatant missed throws. And, Allen did not look at himself from what we were able to see on the TV broadcast. He just looked out of it, like he was maybe in his head a little bit too much, trying to not make the big error. And to be fair, he didn't. That's what happens when you play a little bit more conservatively, when you're not clicking on all cylinders. You're taking the dump downs. Dawson Knox had a big game getting involved in the passing game. No interceptions after committing 6 in the first 3 weeks. So he didn't look good, but he didn't lose the game for his team early, and that was a big thing. The run defense steps up. You mentioned some of the sneaks, but Nick Chubb held to just 19 yards in this game. And here's the thing about that. 21 of those yards came on 2 plays. They stopped him for a loss 6 times. 8 of his 14 attempts were for 1 or fewer yards. A great performance by the defensive line, by Leslie Frazier, calling up some run blitzes, Matt Milano, and everybody causing some havoc. Nick Chubb held in threat. He did have some nice gains out of the passing game, out of the backfield, but a good bounce-back performance from this Bills defense, Thad.
Yeah, and I think there are things that the Bills will take away from this game, even though it was a comfortable win against a lesser team, that you feel good about. I think probably number one is the way that run defense played. Number two, let's flip around to the other side. The Bills were able to run the ball in this game, 86 yards each for both Devin Singletary and James Cook. There was, I wouldn't call it 4-minute offense, but the Bills were able to chew some clock and finish this game off, not having to rely consistently on Josh Allen. So, that was definitely a positive coming out of this game. And a second half touchdown, everybody. It can really happen in Buffalo. So there were, good, positive things that, the Bills have an opportunity to build on here. So, going forward, I think this game probably won't be remembered as much more than the end of just a bananas week in Buffalo. And after the game, the Bills and Sean McDermott talked about all the different stories, all the different things that were a part of getting them to the airport on Saturday, how they managed the weather, and then how important it was for them to come out with a W at the end of the day.
I mean, you call it the city of good neighbors for a reason. I mean, you saw that in full effect on Friday and Saturday, and I went out of my house to go to the facility and picked up Vaughn and Sam, and down the road came the big plow, and I think he stopped, and we got out. We took a quick picture, and he did a great job, clearing the road so we could get out of the development there.
I rode with Coach McDermott, which is cool. I think that was kind of part of the insurance policy for me when I moved here to Orchard Park and I came to Buffalo. Like you said, Coach McDermott lives right there. I was like, all right, cool. I didn't know he was gonna get 7 feet of snow, but I was like, if anything, everywhere to go down, I live right next door to Coach McDermott. So Coach McDermott picked me up. I just, waded my way through the snow, got to the street. Coach McDermott picked me up, came to the facility, and, everything was cool.
Yeah, Squirrel and Mark Braun, they came with a big old tractor and, dug me out. I had a lane about this big, and, the radars in my car were beeping the entire way down my driveway because it felt like I was about to hit something. So I'm sure it's going to be like that for a while. I guess we'll have to APO on that, figure out a way.
Shout out to my neighborhood. My neighborhood was super awesome. We were out shoveling for about 2 hours. The whole neighborhood came out and started helping me shovel my stuff. And I just had a really cool experience. It's my first time really getting stuck in the snow, and I had to make a little path to my car. The whole neighborhood came out, like I said, and was helping out, so it was pretty cool. It was fun. My daughter loves playing in the snow all the time, so I don't like it as much, but she loves it.
We easily could have folded and allowed it to be an excuse for us. But again, trusting the guys that we have in this locker room that are true professionals that do things the right way. We were just trying to win a football game. And that's our mindset and our goal every time we step out in the field. Unfortunately, we got it done today.
A couple quick stories beyond what you just saw or heard from the snow issues from the Bills. Number one, Shaq Lawson was asked did he drive himself to the stadium on Saturday. He said, absolutely not, sir. He said that back when he was a rookie, he had an issue driving in the snow. So from now on, in the snow, he gets rides or he takes Ubers. No more Shaq Lawson behind the wheel. Probably a smart idea. Number two, and I thought this was interesting, Roger Saffold was asked, how much of a impact this week with the delays and everything that happened, the game being moved. He's like, look, whether it's COVID, whether it's LA fires, or whether it's this, games are moved all the time, and you got to have the right mentality to deal with it. And he said, look, I like the mentality we have on this team. So, certainly the Bills weathered the storm figuratively and literally to get a big W in this one.
Yeah, and probably the most I've ever been disappointed in a text from my parents. They live in the general vicinity of Josh Allen. They do not know Squirrel Winter and Mark Braun. I was really hoping that they knew who Squirrel was, but have to report they do not know the infamous Squirrel now. Back to the game itself, I just want to touch on James Cook a little bit, that run game. Obviously, James Cook, Devin Singletary, both doing super well today. James Cook, when he gets ahead of steam, he is just fast through that hole. I mean, I think you talked about in your draft prep with Carl Jones when we were talking about Cook and his abilities. He's not super, make you miss, things like that. But when he gets a lane, when he's running fast, when he's running straight, it's just tough to stop that guy for, not a big chunk of yards. And if they can have some sort of tandem attack, I mean, who knows when the heck Nyheim Hines finally, grasps the playbook or finally gets involved into it. There's a lot of options out of that backfield that kind of can excite you now.
The thing with James Cook, AJ, is that when I watch this Georgia film, there were a lot of plays where that Georgia offensive line was so good that he'd have giant holes, and he looked great. Of course he looks great. It's a giant hole. Now look, getting that guy in space is where you want him to be. So if you can create a hole big enough that he's basically in space the moment he touches the ball, he's going to look good. If he's going to be a better contributor, a more consistent contributor on this Bills offense, he needs to find a way to do more than just be the guy that's fast through the big hole. Still, positive steps in this game. And again, there's a young guy, a rookie, developing. Anytime you can build some confidence, I think that's a good thing. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Josh Allen did not look good. I mean, I tweeted, in the first half of the game that at one point the Josh Allen we saw was the one that people who thought he wouldn't work out when he was drafted thought he would be. I mean, just flat out missing throws. Nyheim Hines, quick screens, Isaiah McKenzie, just not doing the right thing. And one of the things I wondered this week was, before the Vikings game, he talked about how he spent countless hours in the training facility, getting work done with the trainers. Well, this week, Friday, no one came to the facility because of the snow. And Saturday they had to travel, and again, really, getting players from point A to point B to point C on the plane was the entire focus of Saturday. So Josh Allen, in those 2 days, didn't really have any work done. Hold on a second, let's turn the lights out here. There we go. So I wonder how much that hurt Josh Allen, not having the time to be able to, go to and use whatever facility or medical system was helpful at One Bills Drive to get him ready. Now, look, there was no discussion about the injury impacting him in this game. Just like last week, they should have given me a heads up here, AJ, about when they're going to turn the lights off. That would have been helpful. Anyway, so that's my theory on Josh Allen. The other big part of this game I want to get into was the quarterback sneak stop in the third quarter. Big spot, too. I mean, again, we talk about this game being a comfortable win for the Bills. But at that point, Browns are down 6 with the ball, Bills 35. I mean, in scoring range. And 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, they stopped Jacoby Brissett twice on sneaks. The Bills talked about after the game that they had scouted on film that Brissett was a guy that was going to use the sneak a lot. The Browns were incredibly successful in short yardage, and they employed the sneak a ton to make that work. So they were prepared. And, Shaq Lawson for the second straight week, a big part of making that play work. And Ed Oliver talked at length about how when Shaq's in Buffalo, he brings the juice, he brings the energy, he makes a difference in the locker room. And, Shaq making those plays, he talked about how fired up he was. And the fact that when you're in that spot, Ed Oliver said, your back's against the wall, you just got to make a play. For a defensive line that has been much maligned against the run, and I know quarterback sneaks aren't technically against the run, those are 2 big stops right there. And for them to be 3 for 3 in their last 3 quarterback sneaks is darn impressive. So, look, the Bills have struggled the last couple weeks. I don't know if anyone, I know I didn't look at that and say, well, this is an indication of a definite long-term problem for this team. Short-term problems for sure, and they may crop up again. But in this game, the Bills prove that they can win against the run, they can win against the sneak, and they can make those big defensive plays when necessary, even if, me having the Bills on 2 of my fantasy teams didn't work out great because the Browns got 2 garbage touchdowns. We'll let that go because when it mattered, the Bills defense made the plays that won this game.
Now, you talk about key moments that really turned the tide. One moment in the first half, now it only led to a field goal, but the Bills, couldn't get anything going on offense. Their first 2 drives, I believe, were 3 and out. They get with a 3rd and 10. Allen dumps it off kind of to Dawson Knox. It was high above his head, too. He makes the catch, probably maybe 6 or 7 yards, still had a long way to go. Gets past that first defender, runs him over, extends for that first down. Only led to a field goal, but that was a big moment for the Bills to get some more points. I think it might have been on the maybe the 4th drive, but either way, a big moment for him. He had a nice game, 7 receptions for 70 yards. And then speaking of Tyler Bass field goals, another great game from him. He's had some up and downs with some tips and things like that, but 6 for 6 ties the franchise record. Obviously, you don't really want your kicker to be in a position to tie the franchise record for field goals. It says something about your red zone offense and things like that. Now, some of those were, they didn't really need touchdowns at those points, but still, Tyler Bass, a really great game. Sean McDermott, very appreciative of his performance today.
Hey, one of the things we talked about on Buffalo Kickoff Live before the show, and Josh Reed made the point, when you don't talk about the kicker's probably doing a good thing, or your team is so terrible that it doesn't matter. this is obviously the former. Tyler Bass has been really good. What do you make? 2 more point afters in this game? Was it 2? Got to do the math now. He had 6. No, it must have been 1 because they went for 2 on the other touchdown. So he's at 102 consecutive point afters made. Only the second guy in NFL history since they moved the PAT line back to make 100 in a row. 6 for 6 on field goals. First Bills player in history to make 6 when he only attempts 6. Bass has been huge, and last week, although the Bills lost the game, made a tying field goal late, at the buzzer. It wasn't a long one, but still was a tying field goal. So he's been excellent for this team and was excellent again in this game. If you switch some of, Cade York had one partially blocked by Daquan Jones. If that's a make, and maybe you take a couple of those Bass misses or makes and turn them into misses, this game's totally different. So having that advantage at kicker was a big benefit for the Bills in this game. I think at the end of the day, this was a game where, the Bills kind of came in, like I said, it looked like they were distracted, but once they kind of got going, once they kind of got their feet under them and got comfortable, making plays and acting like the team that they are, they were able to pull away and control this game. Kind of the same, of how things went for Buffalo and Orchard Park this week. Obviously, a huge curveball, to say the least, with all the snow that came in, but the Bills, Western New York community, and Orchard Park and Hamburg and all those towns, they dealt with it. They understood it. They knew how to get past it, did what they had to do. And, there will be a situation where, obviously Buffalo and Orchard Park and, they will be fine at the end of the day. They will, recover from the snow and, move on and everything will be as it should be in those cities. Same thing with the Bills here. It took them a while, but at the end of the day, everything was as it should be with the Bills, their season, and this team moving forward. There's questions again, and we'll deal with that on Thursday when they play again at this stadium against the Lions. But the Bills needed a game to get right. They definitely got right against the Browns today. AJ?
Yeah, so the Bills with the victory move to 7-3 on the season. Miami on their bye. They are now tied atop Miami, of course, with the tiebreaker. And like you said, the Bills will be right back in Detroit. I wonder if they're leaving anything behind. Maybe Thad's leaving his tripod there, but we will be right back with Buffalo. Actually, we'll see if we do Buffalo Game Day Recap. It's Thanksgiving. I think we might want to, we'll see. But for Thad Brown, I'm AJ Feldman. Thank you for joining us on Buffalo Game Day Recap. Enjoy the rest of your football weekend, and we'll see you next time.